Dear professors, my dear students, friends, good morning to everybody. I am very happy to meet you all during this COVID 19 curfew season. I hope you are all safe at your homes, but still learning a lot through online. I welcome all of you on behalf of Department of Mathematics for the webinar on CSER Net Set examination conducted today, 27/5/2020. I am Dr. A. Mohan presenting you the webinar. For any competitive examination, many of us do not take the copy of the syllabus, which is very essential. For example, CSER Net Syllabus Part A comprises of reasoning and quantitative aptitude. In quantitative aptitude, we have data interpretation as well. Similarly, in reasoning, we have different types of reasoning. Part B and Part C syllabus comprises as follows: Unit 1, Analysis and Linear Algebra; Unit 2, Complex Analysis, Algebra and Topology; Unit 3, Ordinary Differential Equations, PDE, Numerical Analysis, Calculus of Variations, Linear Integral Equations, Classical Mechanics. Unit 4 comprises of Statistics and Probability. Of course, for mathematicians, Unit 1, 2, 3 will be directly relevant. Of course, Unit 4, some part which we know we can attend from Unit 4 also. The question paper pattern of the CSER net question paper is as follows. Part A, out of 20 questions you have to answer 15. Part B, 40 questions are there from which you have to answer 20. And for Part C, out of 60 questions you have to answer 20 questions. You can see in Part B and Part C there are enough choices. Similarly, the negative marking is there for Part A and Part B, but for Part C there is no negative marking. Similarly, no partial marking is also. That means if a question has options as A, C and D, you have to clearly write A, C and D. Even if you get the answer as A and C, it will not be given marks. So this is the question paper split up for Part A. Of course, sometimes it may vary plus or minus 1 questions. You can see logical reasoning ability and mental ability. It consists of 9 questions approximately. Similarly, quantitative ability, of course, we can do well. Success mantra. Today's webinar is not only about giving problems and solutions, because you can get the questions and solutions from any textbook. But the important point is the strategy. So, what is the success strategy? So, first you learn the concepts. Of course, we are all learned professors, but still we might not be strong in some of these topics. So, what you have to do is strengthen the topics which are already strong for you. Similarly, learn those topics which are not familiar to you. Then practice. And the third step is learn application of concepts. While doing problems, we will come across concepts in a different way so that we can learn the concepts once again. Then test taking is very important, because ultimately we are going to write an examination. So frequently you have to take mock exams. Definitely, if you are doing consistent preparation, and smart work, definitely you will end up with success. So, these are the important points. You should know the syllabus, you should have a study plan, you should have a regular reading habit. Similarly, strong fundamentals, good study materials. You have to memorize the formulas, go through example problems, practice previous papers, take mock tests. So, these are important key points. Okay, at last you have come to the main part of this webinar session. What we are going to do is, we are going to do some of the problems and how to approach such problems. I have carefully chosen very moderate level questions only because it is a one-way communication and you people are only listening and there is no interaction. So I have taken very reasonable questions. Yes. Which of the following sets is uncountable? So what do you mean by uncountable? So uncountable means the opposite of countable. What is a countable one? I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. So a countable set means every element of a set is associated with a natural number. This element 1, second element, third element, fourth element, likewise. So that's the thing. If you see the question, first option, log x equal to p by q for some p comma q belongs to n. For some p comma q belongs to n means you can take a value for p. For example, you take p as 3 and q as 4 like that. Substitute it. Log x is equal to some value. Tell me how many values you'll get? How many values you'll get? Definitely one value. Or sometimes you may have, no, definitely only one value because log x, for every x it will have different. So, first one, only one solution which is a countable one. Go for the C. C is similar to that A, so it is also countable. What about B? B, cos x power n plus sin x power n equal to 1 for some n belongs to n. Here, for some n belongs to n, for convenience I am taking n as 2. What will happen if I am taking n as 2? It will become cos square x plus sin square x equal to 1, which becomes an identity. Therefore, this is true for all values of x. So, uncountable number of values will satisfy option B. Therefore, B is the uncountable. So, this is the example which we have discussed. The second problem. Consider a sequence an given by an equal to and bn equal to sigma ak. Which of the following is true? So, limit n tends to infinity bn, limit supremum, limit infimum, and the lower and upper bounds of the sequence. So, what we have to do? First, we have to calculate bn. What is bn? Expand the summation. Bn is equal to a1 plus a2 plus a3 plus etc. a. Ultimately, we are going to put n limit n tends to infinity. So, which means it is an infinite series, a1 plus a2 plus a3 plus etc. infinite series. Right. Now, you can get the values of a1, a2, a3 from the first definition and substitute it, which will become an infinite series. Now, you see. Now, you see this. Bn, okay. How we are getting it? Substitute the values of a1 plus a2 plus etc. and then you are getting this bn. But the point to be noted here is For different values of even and odd values, we get different values for Bn. So what happens when n is even? It ends with minus 1 by 4. Whereas if n is odd, it ends with minus 1 by 2. So for Bn, for n even, we have a different answer. For n odd, we have a different answer. So putting n equal to infinity, what will happen? We'll get an infinite series. You know the model of this infinite series, which is nothing but log 2. So when n is even, the answer is log 2. When n is odd, the answer is log 2 minus 1 by 2, which is approximately 0.193. So you go back to the choices. Yeah, here you see limit n tends to infinity Bn equal to 0, greater than 1 by 2, less than 1 minus 1 by 2. So we have noticed the case when n is even, it becomes log 2, which is 0.6. So definitely it should be greater than 1 by 2. Therefore, the answer is option B. Which of the following is true? For this, we have to use a simple convergence formula. What is the test for convergence? The usual tests are comparison test, p-test for positive series, similarly alternating series. Here, the first one is an alternating series. For alternating series, the rule is, first you have to check whether the terms are monotonically increasing or decreasing. Here 1 by n, so 1, 1 by 2, 1 by 3, 1 by 4, etc. So it is monotonically decreasing. First condition is satisfied. What is the second condition? Limit n tends to infinity, the nth term should be 0. That is also 0. So option A is converging, but they have given it as does not converge, so it is false. B is a very known series. Every one of you know sigma 1 by n is 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3, etc., which is a divergent series. So we have to check option C and D. Option C and D are same expression. If it is converging, choose C, otherwise choose D. You see, what we have done is double summation is there, so keep the outer summation. Just substitute the values for n equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. Now you take summation inside, each one becomes a series. So first series becomes 1 by 2 square plus 1 by 3 square, etc. Second one becomes 1 by 3 square, 1 by 4 square, etc. Now we collect the terms. How to collect the terms? You see, here 1 by 3 square, here 1 by 3 square, so 2 times 1 by 3 square. Similarly, 1 by 4 square will come 3 times. So 3 times 1 by 4 square. Continuing like that, 4 times 1 by 5 square, etc. So now we get a series of this form. What is the form? You see, this is the form. 1 by 2 square plus 2 by 3 square plus 3 by 4 square, etc. Substituting the values, you are getting it, which is written like this. Now this becomes a very simple series, which is of the form 1 by n. So if you compare with 1 by n, you can conclude that it is a divergent series. The next question is, f from R to R is a continuous and one-on function, then which of the following is true? F is onto, f is either strictly decreasing or strictly increasing. So you should know what do you mean by one function, onto function, etc. for such problems. Okay, continuous and 1 1 function. What do you mean by continuous and 1 1 function? Definitely it is without any break, so it will be like this. It will be like this. Then only it will be continuous. You see, it is also 1 1 function. What is the definition for 1 1 function? If you draw horizontal line, the line should cut the graph at only one point. Then it will be a 1 1 function. So there is no possibility of drawing graph like this. So either it will go up or it will go down. So I think you might have guessed the answer for this. So what is the answer? The answer is either strictly decreasing or increasing. Okay, some of you may have the doubt how it may be onto. Definitely onto may be option for some functions, but it's not a case for all. For example, if you take the e power x graph, you see for negative x also, positive x also, e power x gives only positive values. So naturally, for negative values in the codomain, you don't have the pre-image, therefore not onto. There are some functions in which onto, but the question is always whether f is onto. No, it's not necessary. The next one is, what's the next one? Either strictly increasing or decreasing. As I already told you, since it is 1 1 function, definitely the graph should be either continuously increase or continuously decrease. So naturally B is the option. C, there exists x belongs to us such that f of x equal to 1, not necessary. It's not necessary. For example, if you instead of taking e power x, if we take 2 plus e power x, definitely the value will be always greater than 2. So no possibility of getting f of x equal to 1. So the answer is option B. P of x denote the characteristic polynomial of matrix A. Then for which of the following matrices it is a constant? See, this is a very, very simple question, but looks like a very different variety. So what is a characteristic polynomial? Every one of us know Cayley-Hamilton theorem application. That's all. So every square matrix satisfies its own characteristic equation. That is called a characteristic polynomial. So the first polynomial is for A, the second polynomial is for A inverse. You know, for a 2 by 2 matrix, finding A inverse is very simple. 1 by determinant of A into adjoint of A. That is just the diagonal elements will be interchanged and the other diagonal elements will be changing their signs. You see, very simple. What we have done, we have taken A equal to A, B, C, D and just the you see, here, this is a formula. Every one of us know what is the characteristic polynomial for a third order matrix. Lambda cube minus s1 lambda square plus s2 lambda minus s3. Same way here for a 2 by 2 x square minus trace of A, which is nothing but s1, determinant means s2. Similarly for A inverse. So the point is, what they have given is PA of x minus P of A inverse of x equal to 0. So using that, if you go, what will happen? PA of x minus PA minus 1 of x is constant. So in other words, when you subtract these two, then trace of A inverse minus trace of A will become 0. Trace of A inverse equal to trace of A. What is trace of A inverse? You see here, trace of A inverse is nothing but not D plus A. 1 by determinant of A into D plus A. That's the thing. Similarly, for this is trace of A, this is trace of A. You see, trace of this is D by A. Don't forget 1 by determinant A is outside. So 1 by determinant of A into D plus A. So A plus D cancels. So determinant of A becomes 1. So the condition is for which matrix the determinant value is 1. So very simple, you can calculate. Which of the following matrices is not diagonalizable over R? Of course, all engineering college professors or even BSc Maths, this is a very elementary question. Normally we go for diagonalization. First step is we'll factorize, that means we'll find the eigenvalues. If all the eigenvalues are distinct, then definitely the matrix is diagonalizable. Finished. Because if all the eigenvalues are distinct, eigenvectors will be linearly independent. Suppose if some eigenvalues are equal, then also if eigenvectors are independent, it is possible. See, this is a theory. N by n matrix is diagonalizable if and only if it has n linearly independent eigenvectors. How to get linearly independent eigenvectors? If all the eigenvalues are distinct, then it is diagonalizable. No checking needed. But if some eigenvalues are repeated, then also it is diagonalizable if linearly independence exists. We'll see. You see, option A, the eigenvalues are 2, 2 and 3. What I have found is, I have found the vectors, eigenvectors. Now you see, I have got both the eigenvectors as 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, which are linearly dependent, therefore not diagonalizable. Since the first answer is coming, we need not go for second, third, and etc. What is the rank of the following matrix? Of course, this is a very elementary school level question, but it comes in CSER. Don't think this is a very easy question I can answer. No, the thing is you have to get practice. So why I have included this problem is even such silly questions can be asked, which we can never think to be a CSER net question, but for such questions also you should have enough practice. Of course, I am skipping this. Simple, every one of you know, by doing elementary transformation, you have to make so many zeros, and finally, after getting into the canonical form, see, all the 5 zeros, 5 rows are non-zero rows, so it's the thing, right? The next question, let C be a counterclockwise oriented circle of radius 1 by 2 centered at I equal to root of minus 1. Then the value of the contour integral is. So what is the equation of the circle here? The equation of the circle is z minus I equal to mod z minus I equal to 1 by 2. Because the radius is 1 by 2, the center is I. So if you factorize the denominator, z power 4 minus 1 will be factorized as z square minus 1 into z square plus 1. Once again factorizing z plus 1 into z minus 1 into z square plus 1. Equating the denominator to 0, you will get z equal to 1 or minus 1 plus I or minus I. So out of all the 4 values, which is inside? So this is an application of Cauchy's integral formula or Cauchy's residue theorem. Here you see the denominator is factorized as z minus 1, z plus 1, z minus I, z plus I. Z equal to I alone is inside. All other points are lying outside. So apply the formula 2 pi I into f of A. Just substitute z equal to I. Get the answer is minus pi by 2. Consider the function given by. Which of the following is false? Here the function is continuous one, e power z. So whatever value or z you are substituting, you will get the values. But our focus should be on whether it is an open set or closed set. What is the definition of open set? We have a very abstract definition, but very simple to understand. It is just like open interval. So what is the concept of open interval and closed interval in one dimension, real number line? So open interval means boundary values are not included. Closed interval means boundary values are included. Same way, here you see mod z less than 1, mod z less than or equal to 1, mod z greater than 1. First option less than 1. Therefore, boundary is not included. Therefore, it should be an open set, but they have given it as not an open set. That's all finished. So, A is the correct answer. Whereas B and C equal to sign is there. So, B is closed, clearly given, not an open. Similarly, C is closed, that is also correct. Option D, unbounded open set. Yeah, that is also open set. So, A is the false statement. So, these are the definitions which I have already given. Next question. Given a real number A greater than 0, consider the triangle delta with vertices 0, A plus IA. If delta is given the counterclockwise orientation, then the contour integral with the real of z denoting the real part of z is equal to. It's a very ordinary question. So they have given the vertices of the triangle. So you can draw the triangle. How to draw a triangle? If you take the axis like this, then the triangle will be like this, correct? So this is 0, this is A, and this is A plus IA. What you have to do? You have to do the line integration. But the problem is you have to do 3 times line integration. What is the alternate method? The alternate method is Green's theorem. So Green's theorem gives you a formula of converting a line integral into a surface integral. So what real of z into dz, real of z is x, dz I have written dx plus I dy. So integral over triangle x dx plus ix dy. So we take p as x, q as ix, apply the formula dou p by dou y, dou q by dou ix, substitute, it is converted into a double integral dx dy. So what is double integral dx dy? Double integral dx dy is nothing but area of an enclosed region. So here the area of triangle is to be taken. So what is the area of triangle? Half into base into height. So the answer is half a square. Consider a set of matrices in which of the following is true. You see, the method of coining the problems, very ordinary problems are looking like a very tough problem. It's a very simple set. Why it is simple? They have taken S as only plus 1 and minus 1. So if you put S equal to minus 1, element is minus 1, B, 0, 1. What is the other element? 1B, 0, 1. So, that G contains only 2 elements. G forms a group under addition is the first option. Just add the 2. What will happen? In one it is minus 1, in the other it is plus 1. So, minus 1 plus 1 becomes 0. But S should be only minus 1 and plus 1. So, sum of 2 elements is not in the same set. Therefore, addition doesn't satisfy the closure property. So, skip. Move to multiplication. Check it. For example, you see, G is given. In the first case, if you add 2, you will get 0, 0, 0, so which is not possible. Then second case, so every element in G is diagonalizable over C. So what do I mean by diagonalizable? It is already in the diagonal form. Because it is x minus 1 whole square, so we can diagonalize it. Then next one is G is finitely generated group under multiplication. So, what is the answer for that? The second option is abelian group. See, here AB not equal to BA, so it is non-abelian, but it is a group under multiplication. Again, this is a very simple question. Every first year or second year college student can solve. What is it? It is a homogeneous equation. So what is the usual technique? Put x equal to e power z. For z equal to log x. Then xd will be d dash and x square d square will be d dash into d dash minus 1. Converting this differential equation with variable coefficients into differential equation with the constant coefficients and then solve. Very simple. Just I have given the methodology. I think you can solve it. The positive values of lambda for which the equation has non-trivial solution satisfying y of 0 equal to pi and y dash of 0 equal to y dash of pi. Very simple. Direct question. It is a second order ordinary differential equation. So the auxiliary equation is m square plus lambda square equal to 0, m equal to plus or minus lambda I. From that you can calculate CF, which is nothing but y. Now you apply y of 0 equal to y of pi, you get an equation. Y dash of 0 equal to y dash of pi, you get another equation. Solve, you get the values of the constants. You see, y equal to C1 cos lambda x, C2 sin lambda x. Now you substitute 0 and pi. Since solving two equations, they have taken the determinant because the question is non-trivial solution. What is the condition for non-trivial solution for a homogeneous equation? Delta should be equal to 0. So that's why we have taken delta equal to 0. Option B is the correct answer. Of course, this is a question just I have taken to relax. This is a question asked in Unit 4. Mainly questions from Unit 4 will be very theoretical statistics. But this one is a very simple school level mathematics probability problem. There are 30 questions in a certain multiple choice question paper. Each question has 4 options and exactly one is to be marked by the candidate. 3 candidates ABC mark each of the 30 questions at random independently. The probability that all the 30 answers of the 3 students match each other perfectly. So, how to start the problem? For example, first question has A, B, C, D, 4 options. A student can answer either A or B or C or D. So, first question can be answered in 4 ways. Second question, same way, 4 ways. Third question, 4 ways, etc., etc., etc. So, what happens? Each question can be answered in 4 different ways. So 30 questions can be answered in 4 power 30 ways. So what is n of s? 4 power 30 into 4 power 30 into 4 power 30, because 3 students are answering first person and. So what is the favorable case? You have to get all the answers equal. For example, first fellow ticks B. And what the second fellow also takes B. So they don't have their own choices. So they can answer in only one way, just like that of B, A. So that is a favorable case. So numerator 4 power 30, denominator 4 power 30, 4 power 30, 4 power 30. 1 4 power 30 cancels. So we are getting the answer 4 power minus 60. Again, you see, such a very simple problem. Consider the function defined. For what values of C, f is a probability density function. Every one of us know it's a very elementary 11th standard, 12th standard level problem. What is the PDF? For a PDF, integral total probability equal to 1. So just direct integration, you'll get the answer. But the only trick is that e power minus x power 4. So what you have to do is you have to use beta gamma functions. The clue is there in the choices. So once you see all the answer choices are in gamma, definitely you can do some substitution and go. Before that, you should know about gamma functions also. That's important. So what is the gamma function? Gamma function is integral 0 to infinity x power n minus 1 into e power minus x is gamma of n. So what I have done is simply, again the key here is making that minus into plus infinity as 2 times 0 to infinity. That is a must one, because even power. So if you are directly substituting x power 4 equal to t, for minus infinity also I'll get t equal to infinity. For plus infinity also I'll get t equal to infinity. So the crucial technique here is making minus into plus infinity as 2 times 0 to infinity, and then only you have to do the substitution. Otherwise your substitution will not work. Then after doing the substitution, this is very simple adjustments, and the final answer is t power minus 3 by 4 into e power minus t dt. Applying that formula, you are getting C as 2 by gamma of 1 by 4. Yeah, it's a double star question. Just I have made it as a symbol. Double star means it is more than one correct answer type coming under part C. These are very crucial because same question may have 2 answers or 3 answers, even 4 answers. Right. So D is defined as r cross r to 0 to infinity by d of xy equal to. So what is the speciality here? The greatest integer function. So what is the greatest integer function? That is to be known. You'll see, this is the greatest integer function. So between 0 to 1, whatever be the input, the answer is taken as 0. Between 1 to 2, whatever be the input you give, the output will be 1. Likewise it goes. Similarly, you should know the metric space. Metric, what is a metric? If it is identity, symmetry and triangle inequality. If these 3 are satisfied, then it is a metric. Right. So what is our question? D of xy equal to 0. Just substitute. So for direct appearance it will be looking like correct, but it's wrong because it is given as if and only. For example, if you put x equal to y, x is 1, y is 1, it is 0. But the question is, what will happen if it is something? For example, you substitute x equal to 1.5, y equal to 1.2. What will happen? 1.5 minus 1.2 becomes 0.3. Using the greatest integer function rule, 0.3 will become 0. So, even when x is not equal to y, sometimes d of xy may be 0. So, option A is wrong. What about B? Definitely B will be correct because x minus y or y minus x, since we are putting modulus, automatically it will become equal. So B is true. Then what about C? Again, for C you have to try the values and you have to give intelligently good trial values. Let us see what I have given. You see, for C, I have taken x as 1, y as 2.5, z as 4. What is the reason? Here 1.5 will become 1. Here also the distance is 1.5, become 1. 1 plus 1, 2. Whereas if you put together 1 to 4, 1 minus 4 will be 3, minus 3, so the answer will be 3. So as per rule, d of x comma z should be less than that, but here it is greater. So C is false. So what about D? For metric, all should be true. Whereas here, first one is false, C is also false, therefore it is not a metric. So the answer is, what is that? B and C. B is true and D is true. The maximum value of the objective function under the linear constraints is, again this comes under operation search, simplex method or graphical method. Since it's a two-dimensional variable, graphical method works, and of course it needs no explanation. Everyone knows, even it's a 12th standard level question. The next question, consider a function, then which of the following are true? It's very interesting to see such questions. We have to appreciate the question setters, because even though this is a very, very direct question, but unless you are thorough with knowledge, concept, it will be very difficult to attempt such questions. So, every one of us knows or studied that vertical line test and horizontal line test. Vertical line test is used for checking whether it is a function or not, whereas this is a horizontal line test is used for checking one function. So let me see the graph. You see this one. It cuts at one point, which means it is a 1 function. You see, it cuts at 2 points, which is not a 1 function. So f is not 1 if the graph of f intersects some line parallel to x-axis in at least 2 points. What we have discussed. It should cut at only 1 point. If it is more than 1 point, it will not be 1. So A is false, because at least 2 points means, it is not 1. If the graph, so it is true. What about B? F is 1 if the graph intersects any line parallel to x-axis in at most 1 point. Yeah, that's true. Maximum 1 point means it is 1. That is also true. C. F is surjective if the graph of f intersects every line parallel to x-axis. Yeah. So, every line parallel to x-axis intersects means for every y there is a corresponding x. So, which means onto. Similarly, if it is not intersecting, then it is not onto. All the 4 options are correct. Okay, right. Okay, dear friends, it's running out of time. So I am very happy that I have covered some interesting questions, and you can do the remaining questions. I have given the answers also, and you do it as a practice session. And to pass the CSER NET examination, you don't think you are a teacher, you think you are a student, or even otherwise, you prepare the questions in such a way that you are going to teach somebody. In that way, if you prepare, definitely everyone will clear. Okay. Wish you good luck. Thank you. Wish you have a bright future. Thank you for spending time. Thank you.